Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving into a story that feels genuinely, I mean, it's really unique in racing history. The life and career of Fine Motion.
Mm-hmm.
This was a horse that, she sort of transcended the track. It was all about elegance, supremacy. We're talking about the blue-blooded filly from Ireland, a true import who became a Japanese legend.
Her presence was just.
Yeah.
It was undeniable. The stable staff in Japan, they saw it immediately. They gave her the nickname Oju.
Which means?
It's a title, really, reserved for a noble lady or an heiress. Her trainer, Yuji Ito, he even said it himself. He called her a true noble lady.
But if all she was elegant, she wouldn't be the subject of this deep dive, right?
Not at all.
The sources make it so clear that beneath that aristocratic exterior was something much more potent. They call it freakish talent.
And she used it. She absolutely decimated the Japanese racing scene, stayed completely undefeated through her juvenile and classic seasons.
And smashed records along the way.
That tension is what it's all about. The contradiction between her her calm, noble demeanor and this raw, almost unsettling power.
Yeah.
That's our mission today. To follow the fascinating and often frustrating journey of this foreign princess. She was a generational talent, a monster at the classic level who made history even though she was blocked from the biggest races.
The Oka show and the Oaks, the main Japanese classics, she couldn't even enter.
Exactly.
And here is the jaw-dropping achievement we really need to focus on. Because of this whole trajectory, Fine Motion became the first horse in Japanese racing history to reach an older horse G1 unbeaten from her debut.
A record so profound, so difficult to achieve that it wasn't repeated for another 17 years.
17 years. That tells you everything you need to know about her caliber when she was on.
She didn't just win. She basically recalibrated what dominance even meant back then. And she did it all while facing barriers designed to keep horses like her out.
So let's start at the beginning. How did a horse like this, a horse with this kind of global destiny, even end up in Japan? It all starts with her pedigree, and this is where the story it explodes.
Well, she was born in Ireland in 1999, and her genetics are truly international gold. Her sire was Danehill.
Who is, universally seen as one of the greatest sires of the modern era. He produces speed, stamina, class, everywhere.
Exactly. And if Danehill wasn't enough, you look at the bottom side of her family tree.
Right.
Her dam sire was Troy, an Epsom Derby winner.
So you have that combination, the speed from Danehill, but it's balanced with the stamina and endurance you need for those classic distances. This wasn't just a good pedigree. It was like a blueprint for a world champion.
And it was proven, too, in her immediate family. Her half-brother was the globe-trotting champion Pilsudski.
Oh, wow. I remember him.
A horse who racked up G1 victories in 5 different countries. And famously, he beat the beloved Japanese mare Airgroove in the Japan Cup.
So having a sibling who had already proven he could win on Japanese turf, that just made her genetic value astronomical.
Absolutely.
Huh?
Which, of course, sets up the great irony of why she was brought to Japan in the first place.
Right, it wasn't to race.
Not at all. She was brought in for one reason, to be a future broodmare. Her genetics were seen as too precious, just too valuable to risk on the track. She was there to perpetuate the line.
It was a business decision.
A strategic financial one. The investment was all about the foal she would produce. But then her trainer, Yuji Ito, he saw her. He watched her move, saw her strength, her intelligence.
So what did the sources say about that moment? Because convincing owners to put a future multi-million-dollar broodmare prospect on the track, that's a massive risk. Was it a hard sell?
Ito's conviction was just absolute. He watched her train and he decided she was, in his words, far too special to leave in a pasture.
Wow.
The risk was enormous, but he saw a talent that could define a generation. And history proved him right. That accidental pivot is what put the princess on the racecourse.
So the stage is set. She debuts in December 2001, 2 years old, with the legendary Yutaka Take on board.
Mm-hmm.
And the sources describe it not just as a win, but as a demonstration. Effortless, confident, elegant. She won like she was just out for a morning stroll.
But that dazzling victory, it immediately threw the institutional reality she was facing into sharp relief.
Because she was foreign bred, an import.
She was barred from the Japanese classic races.
Mm-hmm.
And to be clear for you listening, the Oka Show and the Oaks, they're the Japanese equivalent of the English 1000 Guineas and the Epsom Oaks.
The two most defining races for fillies. And her path was just closed.
Completely closed off. It's a huge setback.
The traditional road to immortality was blocked. They did consider an alternative, right? Sending her to France for the Prix de Diane.
They did for the French Oaks, but that plan got shelved. She suffered a minor fracture, unfortunately, so she spent time healing and came back for her 3-year-old season in 2002, knowing her options at home were limited.
And this is where the rampage starts.
This is where the dominance really begins. After she recovered, her handlers brought in Mikio Matsunaga to ride her through the middle of the 2002 season. And she wasn't just winning allowance races, she was making them look like warm-ups.
Exactly. She comes back, wins her allowance race, then the Kankotoku Betsu, and then the Grade 2 Rose Stakes.
And it's the way she won.
Yes. The consensus was that she won all 3 without breaking a sweat. You just see this raw power being used with minimal effort. It was a monster just going through the motions.
The connections then, quite rightly, brought Yutaka Take back for the big end-of-year targets.
And this is where she cements her place in history.
First up was the Shuka show, the third leg of the fillies' Triple Crown, which foreign breds were allowed to enter.
And she won that G1 in record time. Analysts watching that race called her performance flawless, powerful, untouchable.
It was decisive. She proved that despite all the restrictions, she was without a doubt the best 3-year-old filly in the country.
But the real statement came next.
Instead of resting, she stepped up just a few weeks later for the Queen Elizabeth II Cup.
Competing against older mares.
And she won. That achievement is what took her from just a champion filly to a genuine historical rarity.
But put that into context for you. You have a 3-year-old, basically a rookie, stepping into a Grade 1 against seasoned older horses and winning, while still being undefeated from her debut.
As we said, the first in Japanese racing history to do it.
It was a testament to her immense class. At the end of 2002, the racing world was convinced Fine Motion was, well, invincible. She'd navigated every hurdle and beaten them all.
But racing, especially at that level, is a merciless sport. Invincibility is usually fleeting.
And her unbeaten streak ended later that year at the Iruma-Kinen, arguably Japan's most celebrated and most difficult race.
The Iruma-Kinen is so tough. It's a championship race, a real stamina test, run over 2,500 meters. But that specific year was it was marked by tactical insanity.
Tap Dance City, right.
Yeah.
Known for his aggressive front running.
He set a blistering, completely unsustainable pace that just turned the whole race into chaos.
So how did that chaotic pace affect a sensitive runner like Fine Motion? We know she was dominant when she was settled, but this race was anything but.
And that's the crucial piece of the analysis.
Yeah.
Fine Motion was a horse whose performance was so conditional on her emotional state.
Right.
That extreme early pace, the pressure of that G1 field, it meant she never really settled into her rhythm. The sources say she was visibly stressed, she was resisting settling.
And she finished 5th, behind Symboli Chris S.
A respectable finish, but she was beaten by a significant margin. And that race, it was the first time the princess had finally shown vulnerability.
It sort of opened the door to the inconsistency that plagued her career through 2003 and 2004.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You really can't discuss Fine Motion without understanding her psychological profile. She was famously sensitive, highly intelligent, but also very high-strung.
So if she was calm, settled, totally in sync with her jockey, if everything went her way.
She was capable of that unstoppable, flawless power we saw in 2002. She could just power away from everyone.
But if anything disrupted that balance, paddock noise, a chaotic start, a jockey moving too early or too late,
she would often just shut down. Her focus would go, and she couldn't exert that same force.
Yeah.
And that's why her results became so volatile.
It's the price of genius, isn't it? Her extraordinary talent was conditional, but even with the inconsistency, she still delivered some brilliant moments.
Oh, she did. She was still competitive at the very top level. She showed her versatility by finishing a fantastic second in the mile championship behind Durandal, an explosive finisher.
Proving she could still handle top flight speed.
For sure. And her final victory came later in the 2004 Sapporo Kinen, a Grade 2. It was a strong display, proved the engine was still there.
Even if the consistency of 2002 was gone, she retired that autumn, concluding a career of, well, unprecedented heights and frustrating dips.
And here's where her life story snaps right back to its origin. Tragically, it reinforces that irony we talked about earlier.
Because of that priceless pedigree, she immediately entered stud life, fulfilling the purpose she was originally imported for.
The racing career was a spectacular, very profitable detour.
And the expectation must have been massive. Imagine the foals a champion daughter of Danehill, with her record, was supposed to produce. But the story takes a heartbreaking turn.
A devastating one.
Yeah.
She just wasn't getting pregnant. Year after year, they tried, and they all failed.
So they ran tests.
They finally conducted veterinary tests, and they revealed a profound and very sad truth. Fine motion had a chromosomal abnormality.
What does that mean, practically speaking, for breeding?
Well, without getting too deep into the veterinary specifics, the outcome was definitive. The abnormality meant her reproductive system just couldn't function correctly.
So she couldn't conceive or carry foals.
Her biological mission was permanently impossible.
The irony is it's staggering. This filly, imported specifically to be a broodmare, becomes a dominant champion because her owner risked racing her, and it turns out she could never have fulfilled that original purpose anyway.
It's cited as one of the saddest twists in modern Japanese breeding history. It creates this narrative where her time on the track wasn't just a detour. It was, by necessity, the only legacy she could ever leave.
Her entire contribution to history, born from an accidental decision.
But despite that tragedy, she lived a long, peaceful, and much-loved retirement at Fushikita Farm.
When we put her story together, she's remembered for that incredible, impossible natural ability.
We remember the record-breaking Shuka show, the dominance over older horses in the Queen Elizabeth II Cup.
And above all, being the first unbeaten from debut older horse G1 winner.
She was a foreign princess who adapted instantly to the tough conditions of Japanese turf, proving that when pure, unadulterated talent meets opportunity, it can overcome roadblocks, even biological ones.
And while her peak was so intensely bright, but ultimately brief, and her later career was inconsistent, the source material is clear on one thing.
When Fine Motion was at her best, she was absolutely untouchable. Her brilliance defined her.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more.